Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It's been a while. I think what, maybe 2, 3 weeks
Yeah,
since the last cross country podcast. It's been a while since we got safe on.
Jake, always a pleasure to be back with you, man.
He's
Uh,
back. Yeah, since first podcast of June. There you go. The last one was May 30th.
yeah.
So first pod of June. A
I,
lot of news. A lot of news. A lot of stuff to break down.
I was going to say, it was just like the world has certainly not slowed down, especially some of the coaching news. But yeah, this special pod was probably going to do our crosses sometime. But yeah, we had to get back on the mic. There was just too much, too many things happening in the last week and a half.
Every time we kept talking about it, it's like something new would happen. So every time we're like, all right, we'll do it today. And then it's like, there's more news. We had significant news over the weekend, obviously, out of Maryland and Ohio State. Ohio State might have been on Monday, but Maryland's was over Sunday evening into Monday. And then last week, we had the hiring of John O'Dearna at Fairfield, clearing up that head coaching position. We also had early kind of end 2 weeks ago. So I think end like 2 weeks ago, Chris Fife's going to Vermont, and then that head coaching job quickly got filled. So we have a bunch to. We still have how many open jobs right now? Head coaching jobs do we exactly have? UMass Lowell is open. Fairfield was filled. Virginia was filled. Do we have one more?
I mean, technically, Rutgers correct is done in 2026.
I imagine.
What's the official status on that? But
I imagine he has to have a new contract. I don't know. I guess like
Lars to New Jersey, it could happen. New Jersey's having this moment, Jake. I saw a nice tweet. I was like, we're certainly having a moment in the Garden State.
We're definitely going to talk about Lars here in a moment or in a little bit. Okay, so we have UMBC has not announced what their plan is. I imagine they're just going to promote Craig Chick, but I don't know. Things are bizarre over at Catonsville. And then UMass Lowell is open. So we have two currently technically open head coaching jobs in UMBC and UMass Lowell. I guess I don't know. When was Mike Murphy fired at Penn last year?
Was that in June? It was after the initial
June 24th. Yeah. So 1 week from today. So I guess, but everything I can't imagine that Rutgers is going to make a move. They would have made a move. I can't see anything happen. I think if their season's been over again. That was true of Penn too. So I guess technically you never know, but their season was over like 6 weeks ago. So it'd be wild to make a move now. Recruiting is basically right in the thick of it. Which again, that was what made the Penn thing kind of so surprising, was that the move itself maybe wasn't so surprising, but the timing of it. And listen, they still got a really good head coach out of it. So coaches are, as we always kind of this is how coaches can be. On one end of the phone, it could be like, "Can you believe this?" And the other end of the phone, it's like, "Oh, I'll interview next week."
3 o'clock. To secretary.
Perfect. So
I can't believe it, Matt. What's going on with this?
You want me to interview Zoom? I can Zoom you right after I get off this call.
Send me the link.
So, but yeah, we got a lot to get through. This has been one of the more chaotic coaching carousels we've had in a long time. A lot of it more so at the assistant level, but nonetheless, still, Virginia opened, I suppose you could say, though it was filled pretty quickly and internally. Fairfield, notable job. Vermont, opened and then was filled very quickly. So we've had some dominoes. And I think we're going to talk about this because this has been something that was asked of us on Twitter, and I think it's been kind of discussed, is what's driving all of this movement, particularly movement with some coaches getting out of coaching. And I think that there's a lot of layers to it, but one layer that I do think is important is that the coaching carousel has generally been pretty quiet the past couple of years, and we haven't had a lot of movement, particularly at these top end jobs. And so I think due to that, that is definitely part of what's driving in it. And again, there's so much. There's the transfer portal portion of it. There's the positioning, which we've talked about, of these really major Big Ten, ACC, Ivy League programs in comparison to the rest of the country. I think that's a significant part of why you're seeing a lot of coaches moving from mid-major level to taking ACC, Big Ten, Ivy League coordinator positions. It's happened this year. We'll talk about Chris Pfeiffer going to Virginia. John O'Dearna, who became the head coach at Fairfield. Hard to argue that his bet. I mean, two of the coaches hired this cycle left sitting head coaching jobs to go be ACC coordinators, and then got head coaching jobs out of it. So
Casey,
yeah, and then John O'Dearna, and so it's hard to argue that wasn't a very successful path, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that that we're going to dive into. So a lot to get to here. We'll start with the Virginia, Vermont, UMass, Lowell kind of dominoes. So Kevin Cassis is hired a couple weeks back as the head coach of Virginia after. Was he hired right the day after the national championship?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. So the day after the national championship finished, everything finished in Charlottesville. It was announced that Kevin Cassis was the head coach of Virginia. We've done a lot of content on that. We got multiple videos on YouTube up about it. If you haven't seen them, go check them out. We talked about it a little bit, I think, on the last podcast. Me and Ryan did. So a lot there. New coordinator positions open up at Virginia with that. I still don't think Virginia has filled the offensive coordinator position. I think because Cassis was the offensive coordinator, and I can't imagine he's going to run the offense himself now that he's the head coach. So still in need of a offensive coordinator at Virginia, but the defensive coordinator position. Here we go. The Virginia Crosse coaching staff right now on the if you go there, it has Kevin Cassis head coach, Chris Pfeiffer associate head coach, Connor Schellenberger assistant coach. Logan Greco, who was on staff this year, his page is gone. And certain folks who are of the more, how do I phrase this? Maybe the conspiracy, element. I don't mean that pejoratively, just it's the verbiage I'm going to use. We'll take note of Logan Greco no longer being on staff at Virginia. Schellenberger's still there. Schellenberger was not. He was the third assistant this year. So I don't know. I think that's just I don't think any status has officially been confirmed whether he's staying or not. I think we'll have to wait and see. So they still need an offensive coordinator, but nonetheless, Chris Pfeiffer, formerly of Vermont, is hired by Virginia to be the Kevin Cassis' new defensive coordinator. Chris Pfeiffer should be noted. If you're, someone new to the sport of cross, this is nice symmetry actually, because when we first kind of did these coaching carousel pods was the summer of 2016. We still might do a pod on that this offseason.
The greatest summer ever.
Chris Pfeiffer was when he got hired at Vermont, because he was the defensive coordinator of North Carolina when they won the national championship, and so he parlayed that into the Vermont head coaching job. But he's now gone back to the ACC and to be a defensive coordinator, associate head coach. That opened up the Vermont head coaching job, which was very quickly filled by Drew Kelleher, who had been the head coach of Manhattan and got them to the NCAA tournament, was the head coach of UMass Lowell. Drew Kelleher is a Vermont alum, so a kind of obvious fit there. He slides into Vermont, and UMass Lowell is currently open. So let's start with the Virginia domino first. Kevin Cassis hires Chris Pfeifs to be the defensive coordinator. Do you want to start with the Virginia end of it or the Pfeifs end of it? Which one do you want to start with?
Virginia, yeah, just because okay. Talk a lot about Virginia, then we can bring in. I mean, definitely above replacement level assistant type of coach that you could get.
For sure.
We've been on Pfeifs bandwagon for a bit. Vermont has something going. It's just kind of tough in that mid-major bubble to keep it going every single year, but multiple tournament appearances were kind of the victim. Wasn't it back-to-back year the victim of the Terps?
Yes, they got Maryland. They made the tournament 21 and 22. I think they made the America East Championship in 23, so they just came up short of doing 3 in a row. Yeah, 21 and 22, they'd run into Maryland twice.
Yeah, just kind of buzzsaw years, but it was kind of coincided with their peak years under him. It feels like just kind of hasn't really been able to get opportunities outside of Vermont. After great success at North Carolina, kind of felt like maybe could have stuck there for a bit longer. Kind of like got a little bit cachet, but good opening. Like at the time, seemed like at least a good place to start to begin your coaching pedigree. Or coaching career as a head coach. And I thought, he, at least for me, maybe he was just kind of fond of him. But I always thought like he would have been like a really good coach, but like, which we'll kind of get into, and I love your thesis, like those bigger, higher level job just weren't around. And so for Virginia, probably kind of almost what ours kind of talked to Cassis. Like, I mean, I don't know if like they're Pfeifs and Cassis's relationship, but Lars and Cassis were like, more than acquaintances, friends, like, coached together, like known each other for a long time. And he kind of was like, hey, you feel like maybe you've done all you can at Lehigh. If you feel you've done all you can at Lehigh, we could definitely use your hand down here in Virginia. And there's a convincing argument. And as Lehigh's infamous press conference, which we, note often, highlighted that Virginia was an institution that Cassis held in high regard. So, as a match made in heaven, like, I don't know if Pfeifs has the same high regard for Virginia as Cassis did, but it makes sense. Like, the great success at North Carolina, got him to the 2016 title. Paid his dues, made his bones, did well after Vermont. I don't want to make it look like it was a odyssey that didn't bear fruit, but kind of like if you can get these jobs, or if you're like, Ordinary kind of went the other way. We'll talk about, him. But like, if you can get these jobs, especially around this time, not a bad place to be. It's not that Vermont's a singing ship as an institution, or but just we've talked about these, and we're going to then trends like higher institutions of learning in America are definitely going to be going through a transformative like next decade and a half, I think. So if you can get into one of these board established Power 4, ACC, is one of the top 3 conferences in lacrosse, especially. So I think it was a great move for Virginia. Not like you can get him on a bargain, but it's just like a head level type coach who's had success as a defensive coordinator at an ACC school. Bring him here, kind of like give the Cassis that. We've kind of felt that this has been a trend. Like if you're going to get an assistant, you kind of see more and more head coaches or former head coaches, not like assistants replacing assistants. A lot of times you can get a head coach, kind of get another person to set of eyes who had that kind of responsibility. You've seen a lot more teams taking advantage of it. It kind of feels like, what Pitino says, like, I'm not recruiting high school kids anymore. I'm getting the transfer market, people mature and stuff like that. Like, I think, if you can get that coach to be willing to have like slightly subordinate or an associate type level, as opposed to just being the man at their own program. You can kind of bear fruit. Even North Carolina to an extent. Petro, love him. Like has kind of shored up the defense under pressure. This year is what it is, but they had a really strong regular season. So you see this often, and wish Pfeifs the best. I mean, I'll let you talk about like on the Virginia angle, but yeah, I'd love to delve into like thinking of Pfeifs angle, like why this would be the move.
So I think the Virginia angle is. I think that's the more quick one. It makes tons of sense. I think if you're Cassis, you get another really experienced coach alongside you. And look, we have to be fair. We mentioned this when we did the pod on about like how the Cassis thing would work, and I mentioned that I thought the staff element of it would be significant. And what kind of staff you could put together, especially just kind of considering how it all played out with Lars being let go. Lars is very highly thought of within the coaching community, and Cassis taking over. This is a great first step. Again, we have to see what they do on the offensive side of the ball, but if you're looking for when you're looking for a coordinator, you're looking for a couple of things. You're looking for obviously proven track record of success at this coaching the side of the ball that they do. You want to have an advantage there. Chris Fives was a very successful defensive coordinator in the ACC, the first corner out of North Carolina. He built had a very successful run at Vermont. Recruiting kind of does come into play, and he's got experience. Like he's got a bunch of experience in the ACC. I don't know exactly. I was looking when you mentioned if he had a relationship with Cassis. Cassis was an assistant at Duke when Fives was a player in the ACC at Maryland. I don't know if there's anything there. Obviously, I'm sure they've kind of crossed paths along over the years on the trail and things like that. But Fives played in the ACC for 4 years at Maryland. He very quickly after that became the defensive coordinator in North Carolina. He was pretty young. He was like 24, 25. And then had a really good run there. He was with Bresci. He was on Bresci's first staff when Bresci got to Carolina, and then was with him all the way through the national championship win, and then went to Vermont and had a great run. Made 2 NCAA tournaments back to back. Again, nearly made it 3. They were the top team in the America East for like 3 years there. After Albany's kind of run ended, they assumed the mantle. And to your point, it's hard sustaining success at that level, and particularly in his case when a bunch of his guys have entered the transfer portal over the past couple of years. A lot went to Maryland, which I don't know if that was like Jake Bernhardt was his offensive coordinator was at Maryland for a year. I don't know if that was just him kind of like guys were entering the transfer portal and Tillman kind of used that relationship to sort of, grab quality players where he could. But they lost a lot of guys, quality guys in the portal. It's a kind of difficult place, sort of to be in. And like by no means was this run unsuccessful. It was an incredibly successful run. But he had, I think, over the past 10 years, they're one of the more. There's obviously Richmond and Towson in there too, and Delaware had that run with DeLuca. But other than that, like they're, I think, right in that mix with teams like Utah and Robert Morris and others who really sustained notable success as a mid-major over a period of time. So it checks all the boxes. Maybe, from Cassis's perspective, this is the biggest head coaching job he's taken on. He did a great job at Lehigh, but this is definitely the ACC, Virginia, especially right now with all the things, kind of movement underneath, the kind of the bedrock, shifting things going on in the sport. I think having another experienced hand there is probably a really valuable thing. And again, an experienced hand who's Chris Fives is from Durham, North Carolina, played at Maryland, assisted in North Carolina, now back with Virginia. He's got a bunch of experience in the ACC. It's been a while, and things have changed. But he knows the area, knows what it's like in the ACC. And so I think having someone of that caliber, and now he brings in 10 years of head coaching experience. So I think for sure it's a really good start. I think there's more notable defensive coordinators maybe out there. I guess I'll put it this way. If you were seeking to kind of hire, if you were going to go this route of the head coach as an assistant, I think there's more notable defensive head coaches right now at the mid-major level than offensive. I'll get to this when we get to Maryland because I was kind of looking at that. And there's some definitely quality defensive coordinators out there as well. I mean, look, Travis Crane at Ohio State, maybe the best defensive coordinator in the country the past couple of years. I mean, just left. So, it seems like he's getting out of coaching. see, I think for Virginia it makes a bunch of sense. I think it's a really good hire. From Fives' perspective, I think it's a combo of things. One, you mentioned this with Vermont. Fives is the third Vermont head coach to depart this school year. The men's soccer coach Rob Dow left for Penn State, and their women's basketball coach Elisa Kresge left for Richmond. So that's at three pretty notable programs. I mean, women's basketball is at a school like Vermont probably the 2 or 3 kind of in that mix after probably men's basketball. Men's soccer's in there. I mean, these are kind of pretty notable programs at a D1 school like Vermont is. And to lose 3 of them in 1 year for 2 of them in some case, other positions. But now Fives as well to what you could see as more of a, I guess, lateral or downward move, at least downward in terms of, head coach to coordinator. I think that does hint to, there's a lot of kind of things going on at Vermont. I know that you've, read more about it, kind of sort of uncertainty there with the university and things like that. But I think it's hard not to feel like that's part of it. And I think you hit on it 100%. In lacrosse, I mean, I think this is true in college sports in general, but I think in lacrosse, it's definitely the case, especially because it's a sport where if you're an athletic director making the hire, it's probably not on your radar as much as men's basketball will be or women's basketball will be. It's if you are in some cases, you might see the search like kind of silo, like handed off to somebody like an associate athletic director or something like that, like somebody else kind of takes it on. It's not necessarily solely the athletic director themselves. In some cases it is, but in some cases it's also more like one of their deputy ADs who's kind of like oversees the program, kind of does the search. I always remember when Maryland hired Tillman, that Debbie Yao was obviously athletic director at the time and did have a part for sure in making the decision to not give Cottle a new contract, but she wasn't really the one who hired Tillman specifically. I think it was Michael Alford, who was like the deputy athletic director at the time. He kind of was the one interviewing. So like, when that's the case, if you are the athletic director or deputy, whoever's making that decision, it's only natural that you're going to go to the kind of who are the hot names out there right now. Like, who are the names that I need to know of? And you're probably going to be like, all right, let me go after them, see if I can hire one of them. Maybe I reach out to somebody else and be like, hey, give me a name here or there I can, look into, things like that. So I think in a sport like lacrosse, especially, when you miss your window, it's really, really, really hard, maybe even impossible to get it back. And so a coach like Fives, his window was 4 or 5 years ago. It was after he had taken Vermont to back-to-back NCAA tournaments. It was after he had established that program as the top dog in their league. He had prior ACC experience, things like that. That was his moment. If a job came open in 2022 or 2023, even 2021, I think he would have been at the top of the list, or at least I think he should have been. I'll put it like this. I don't mean this to be like I don't mean like general controversy here, but if I told you I think Chris Fives is just as good a coach as Kevin Cassis is that a crazy statement?
No, I mean, how many tournaments did Lehigh go? 2?
3.
No, 3. 3. Yeah.
Like, it's like, I think Cassis is a good coach. I said this like he did a great job at Lehigh. I think Chris Fives is also a great coach.
Yeah,
I think he's just
more acknowledging Fives how good he is as opposed to denigrating Cassis. I mean, yeah. Cassis agrees with you.
Yeah, I mean, he hired him. But no, I just think is like, I think the fact that he's just taking this decision is not to me reflective at all on the quality of coach he is. I mean, in some ways it is, because that's why Cassis wanted to hire him. But it's like, I think if North Carolina had come open, I think he would have been an obvious name to throw in there, having been an assistant. If a Big Ten job came open, I think he would have been one of a name you could have thrown in there. But once that window that his team had ended and they kind of fell back a bit, now other names have begin to surface. A guy like John O'Dearna surfaces for what he's done at Syracuse as the defensive coordinator. Taylor Ray, Ray has been in the mix for a long time, but really the past couple years at St. Joe's, things really picked up with the run that they had. Obviously, everybody and their mother wants to hire Dan Chamati. We all know that. Working, but nonetheless, Galloway is one case where it feels like maybe he's ridden it out long enough that he was the hot name at one point and then went away, and maybe now he's kind of coming back. But I just think that from Fife's point of view, it's like our coaches. This is about look at the last couple of these jobs opening. Virginia hired their sitting offensive coordinator in Cassis. Fairfield hired John O'Dearna. Penn did hire Taylor Ray. I think if Taylor Ray isn't at St. Joe's, do you think he gets the Penn job?
That's what I thought helped him the most. That gave him that edge. It was the familiarity. They played each other. Who knows how to recruit Philly area? Yeah, no, tougher. Yeah,
I think
because he didn't do as much Chamati did to put him on the national stage. He just really did well at St. Joe's. Maybe missed some opportunities, but yeah, if he wasn't at St. Joe's, I don't know if Penn would be as comfortable, because I thought that was the other reason why. People are like, oh, we're going to replace him with it. They're like, oh, the guy kind of beats us 50% of the time, who's across town rival.
Yeah. And St. Joe's, in a lot of sports, I remember St. Joe's kind of considers themselves to be above Penn. And I remember when that was the case of when the hire was made, St. Joe's was like, why is he leaving to go to Penn? And it was like, in lacrosse, it's a little bit of a different pecking order. So even go back to Syracuse, obviously different circumstances there, but they hired Gary Gate. Go back way back when Connery got hired at Michigan, defensive coordinator from a school within the league. Harvard hired Jerry Byrne, Notre Dame defensive coordinator. It's not that these guys aren't getting it. Like John Torpy did get the Brown job, but I think for a long time, you always sort of assumed the natural path was I'm a coordinator, I get a head coaching job, and I parlay the head coaching job into being a better head coaching job. And it just doesn't quite feel like that path is paying dividends right now.
No. There's a ceiling, unless you're going to do a Richmond or do,
Towson.
Towson for sure.
Whatever.
It really, I've always likened it to college football. Again, you and Ryan definitely more on the ball. Have more ball knowledge than I see college football nowadays. But I always felt, at least back in the day, it was like be a hot assistant, and then especially if you're a winner or a team, you're on a awning winner. The conference, they're always trying to steal each other's best assets. Just think of Saban's coaching tree. That's one of the Tillman's coaching tree. Used to be one of the best launching pads. Another defensive coordinator, I think, forgive me if you already said, I guess you probably did Warren, right? You said that, right? For Georgetown?
Yeah, Warren. Yeah, went to Maryland from Georgetown.
Yeah, forgive me. But yeah, it really does help to be a really good coordinator on a really good team. Who would have thought, Jake? Especially if you're at one of the big three conferences, it's just Money Mitch. He could probably name his job if Prism runs it back next year.
And he's a great example.
I hope he makes the tournament again. That's all I'm saying.
He's like the original example of this, because he left Bellarmine. It's been years now. People forget. He left Bellarmine for a year to go to Princeton. And
did he take a job? What was the one? That's why I think I called him Money Bitch, because it was 3 weeks and then he left. Or no, I might be mistaking him for somebody else. But no, you're right. That's the one. He bet on himself. Went on the team. Madeline had the core structure there, and just been a great duo there. Same thing with Madeline. He probably could just wait his turn, see what's going to pop up. It doesn't hurt to be at the national champion with the #1 recruiting class next year.
Mitchell was a year at Bellarmine. He was Rutgers offensive coordinator. There during those original kind of when Rutgers really started at the beginning of the Big Ten, from 2015 to 2018 18. He was Rutgers. Some of those, Rutgers teams we known about. He was the offensive coordinator. Then he was the head coach for the year at Bellarmine, and he went to Princeton in 2020. Wow, I hadn't really put his arrival is like the kind of does perfectly coincide with the in a big way. Cuse fans will also note this is right about when Pat March left. Which so not Princeton's offense was good when March was there too. So I don't, but it is just a bit uncanny. But it's you're even seeing this in college football a bit too. Is now like coordinators have kind of sort of gone come back around. But I think it's broader in college sports. These big programs are beginning to see themselves as like separate from everybody else. Like we talked about, like they put themselves in sort of their own kind of bubble. And when that's the case, I think they're really attracted to hiring coaches from those leagues or hiring, the next. And it's also, you always kind of want to be seen as if you're getting the next guy. And like Fives is a good example of this regard because like he's really young still. He's like he's early 40s. He's not an old guy by any means, but you've been a head coach for 10 years and people just kind of, they think of you differently as opposed to, I think Cassis was similarly. You can only interview so many times, and you can only kind of be in the mix before your name just kind of runs cold. And I think that it's a perfect example of it's hard not if you're in his spot, what is probably going to get you more attention? I think at this point, it's 100% the case. It's being the defensive coordinator. And it's also, which again, we'll talk about this, what's the better gig? I mean, if they pay similarly, if you're not advancing up the ladder, like if you don't feel like you're getting to the next step, if you can get similar pay and you don't have to deal with the transfers, everything, like all of that, and especially if you're, say, specifically like his, where Vermont has all that, going on with institutional instability, you basically got to be really dedicated to being a head coach. And some are like, this is what I do. I love it. I love where I'm at. I'm not saying he didn't love where he was at, but you got to be really, really dedicated and bought in to stay. And felt it was time for a change. I think Vermont did as good a job as they could have possibly. I think the Kelleher-Vermont marriage is like the perfect sort of case of like right place, right time. Both kind of jump at this. If you're Vermont, I was thinking from Vermont's perspective of, because remember, Vermont had a bunch of guys get in the portal like right away. They had like 12, like a dozen guys jump in the transfer portal. They've since kind of left. Left. So it looks like Kelleher did a good job of getting down with those guys and getting them to recommit, and they'll be back at Vermont next year. So they've avoided the mass roster exodus. I was kind of thinking Jake Bernhardt maybe as like a guy who had been on Fife's staff, knew the program. Fife's main couple of assistants were pretty young. So I feel like that would have been a really difficult position to kind of put a, new head coach in. It's like promoting a younger guy, like right. We've seen some success with that, like Maris, Dean Scarcello, kind of taking over for Keegs. He did a really good job, but I think the Kelleher thing is like you get an experienced head coach who's proven like at a comparable, honestly, maybe even lower program in Manhattan. Got them to the NCAA tournament, did a great building job there. He's an alum. He'll want to be there. And then also from Kelleher's perspective, I got to be honest, talk about a guy who had felt like it kind of like the UMass Lowell thing. That was not getting off the ground whatsoever. And he was a notable, when he took the UMass Lowell job, he was a pretty notable name in the kind of mix because of what he had done at Manhattan. And I think this also, again, gets into it is like, he felt like a name who, if maybe a job like because it wasn't just the big jobs not opening. We won a couple of carousels that were like no head coaching jobs were opening.
Yeah, it's like
there were no jobs available. And I kind of wonder if he just sort of jumped at the best kind of job he thought he could get. I remember when he took the UMass Lowell job, we were kind of like, if you squint, you could kind of see it, but was it really that much better than Manhattan? I don't know. And again, like nothing against UMass Lowell, but it's just this thing had not gotten off the ground really. They were 2-10 this year. They were 4-9 in 2025, 0-12 in 2024, 0-13 in 2023. I mean, like he won 6 games there in 4 years. And Drew Kelleher's a good coach. I mean, we saw what he did at Manhattan. We saw the staff he put together with him. Took over after. Like, it feels like a really just like he found a life raft a bit, like at a his alma mater at a program that's had recent success. That's got a pretty decent niche, at least, kind of with where they are in Burlington. Five Stars talk about like how he was able to kind of harness the campus there. Being in a pretty cool college town in Burlington. It's different. It's off the radar. But if you're someone who likes that, have an appeal that's had recent success. I think both sides made out kind of like bandits a bit here. And again, who knows with kind of where Vermont's at institutionally and things like that. But at least for the short term, I think neither side, either Kelleher or Vermont, could have done better in this situation.
I even for nothing else, it's like a mini mid-career reset. And like getting yourself back to forgive me, let me correct the record on our boy Money Mitch. It was Pat March. Shout out to Chris, article on News Magician, and co-wrote on College Crosse. But the speed at which Mitch took the job. December 3rd, reports that Syracuse to hire Pat March. And then, Princeton hired Mitchell, I think, like September 19th. Like over into the next season. Obviously, good decision for both March and Mitch. The Mitchell, sorry, and didn't want to divert us too much when we were talking about here, Vermont and Keller and Fifes. And I think, if you can have a chance to kind of, again, I don't want to make it so dire at UMass Lowell, but like a life raft or like a transition, just a job reset, especially if you go back to your alma mater. I feel like it's definitely a good decision for Keller, and it felt like same thing for Virginia and for Vermont. Like if we can get this high level of a coach to come over here, it's a win. And for UVA to get him Fifes as an assistant, Keller is more than a competent head coach. He did really well at Manhattan, and Vermont's not like nothing program. They have enough resources. You just like, I think it's kind of goes back to the thing that we're going to be talking throughout the conversation. Like, it's just everything's coming at you if you're at the mid-major. Before, it's just like maybe institutional support, the will that we always talk about from administrators. Like, do you have the money, the resources? Then you got the transfer portal opening up, so you're losing kids here and there. NIL, other schools can offer more and their alums, potentially. And then you have the house settlement. Is these schools going to start, paying the players? And here you're a mid-major, you're kind of like a feeder system, or kind of like a English football, the divisions.
Absolutely.
But almost feel like you should start putting these players on loans or something. Get back to not just constantly have to replenish your coverage. It's one thing to have like you put everything into one or two classes, you have that run, and you got to like rebuild it. Now it's just like this kid catches someone's eye, and he's now a Maryland Terp. After being all American East. So I think that year, and it's just kind of being asked to do more with less at a lot of schools. Like, you can understand why a fresh start or at a different program, or a more power program in a more powerful conference, like definitely it's enticing at this point in time.
UMass Lowell, that's a tough gig. I don't like. We talk about everything we're talking. If we're talking about all this with Vermont, a program that's made the NCAA tournament twice this decade, we're talking about a UMass Lowell program that's won like single-digit games. It's a tough gig. I mean, you got to find someone who wants a head coaching job, and or maybe it's an assistant you promote. But these are not. These aren't every head coaching jobs are head coaching jobs, but it's not the same the way it was, different period of time. All right, let's transition to Fairfield. This is going to be, we've had fun already, but this is, I think, where we're getting into the fun part of the program. Fairfield hires Syracuse defensive coordinator John O'Dearna. We're big fans of O'Dearna here. I remember even way back when we kind of were some of the first ones to call it the O'Dearna possible option for Syracuse when the Syracuse defensive coordinator search was happening to replace Petro. And it was obvious that they were kind of looking at sitting head coaches. Taylor Ray's name came up, Joe Ampelo's name came up, and he responded to it in a particular sort of way. I remember I mentioned like, hey, like O'Dearna, defensive coach. Look what we just did this year at Manhattan, kind of continuing off what Kelleher had done. Young guy, seemed like a smart idea, and it was. He, I think, picked up where Petro was. I think, and really did better. I mean, I think Syracuse's defense the last couple of years was really strong. Gave them a real mentality. Sometimes that went both ways. It sometimes could go over the line with the penalties and things like that. But he did give them a real identity on that side of the ball. He's active recruiter. He was really well thought of within the at Cuse. Central casting type guy. Handsome fella. But I think this is a really smart move for Fairfield. And I think it's a smart move for O'Dearna too. I think Fairfield's a program that you can look at, and I mean, off the top of your head, where would you, if you were ranking Fairfield somewhere in terms of jobs, where would you have it?
I mean, hold on. It's a school you heard of,
Yeah.
Or it feels like, and I'm not trying to, praise with, backhanded compliment, but like, it is kind of saying this, things are kind of in flux. Fairfield, I kind of, I'm not long on the parochial universities, with somewhat of, aside from Notre Dame, shout out to the Irish, but the smaller, religiously,
it's
founded as a religious type.
It's tough to be those schools. It's tough to be those schools right now.
Yeah, if you had like 2 or 3 billion in the bank, and even that, you see these schools acting like they're a bread line. We can't use that for. So on that end, yeah, I'm like, just again, that's just not an indictment, but like how I kind of feel on higher education. It's just kind of untenable, unsustainable. Like, feels like something's going to be a lot of big changes, especially just with like the enrollment numbers. There's just going to be less kids. When the crash happened in 2008, people stopped having as many children. The kids who were supposed to be 18, 19 now aren't here. And there's going to be less of them even next year, and probably more for eventually. Maybe there'll be a stop, but right now, I think we've reached the peak of people going to school 7, 8 years ago. And now we're kind of really starting to see some of these numbers post, great financial crash. So just schools in general, it's going to be, so that's what I'm saying, name brand schools that people know of, even the flagship university, or the second one in the state, those are schools that kind of you want to bet on. Now, if you want to kind of not use this wrong word, but take this opportunity to try to hone your craft and show that you can do the big man's job, as a head coach, as already has done in Manhattan, but just maybe he felt it was time also, to change the Syracuse. I can understand that benefit. Again, who knows the contract? Maybe maybe they had the cash for it too. So I could see it. For me, we love O'Dearna. Think what he did at Syracuse for defensive, cannot be overstated. They're really bad. I love Petro, but they were not good. His last couple of years there. So I thought he did a commendable job there, and I thought it was a loss for Syracuse. Honestly, I really did. Maybe I had other reasons why the opportunity you couldn't pass up, but if I was Rutgers, I would be like, yo, he was on the market. Like, I would have taken it. Like, if I don't know what they're doing with Brock, and you're kind of right. Like, given the timing, maybe they're just waiting there. But like that was one thing when I heard like O'Neill left on June 9th, I was like, did Rutgers even call? Like, or other schools even like. He's a good name to back-to-back Final Fours.
The Rutgers thing is just they're telling you what they're telling you one of two things. They're telling you either that A, they think the job Brecht has done has been good, but they think they can give him more resources. And they are saying that if they give Brecht more resources, then they can get better results. Maybe that's the case. I'm not, Brecht has done a good job there, and he's proven that he can make a Final Four. So they're kind of making the bet that with more resources, especially as the Big Ten is loading up, Penn State's put a lot in, Hopkins is putting a lot in. I know Ohio State has, Maryland's getting there too. That they think this will work out. That will work out for them best. Or they're saying that it's maybe just not as much of a priority. One of the two. I think that they are putting more resources in, and they're making that bet. Would I make that bet? I don't know. I think I kind of agree with what we sort of settled on a couple months ago, which is that if you had the opportunity, I would just go for a fresh start. I just think that you're a good Rutgers. The worst thing you can say about Rutgers is that they're at the bottom end of their conference, which fair, but it's also like that conference is still the first or second best conference in the country. So like Rutgers is a 13th, 14th, 15th place job in the country. You're going to get they could hire a good head coach. Somebody notable for sure would have been the head coach of Rutgers if they wanted to. They chose not to, and we'll see how it plays out. The reason I asked with Fairfield is I would say it's probably top 30-ish, somewhere in there. Maybe top. But I think it could be better. I think it's a program with a potential to where maybe you rank it there 30th. But do I think they could be a top 20 program? I do. They have a great stadium that they play. Rafferty Stadium is a great place to watch lacrosse. The PLO plays during the summer. Great location. They draw. They have a fan base there. Good location in Connecticut as far as recruiting. Now, it's a challenge. It's always a challenge to kind of be a school like Fairfield, recruiting some of those private high school kids, who really go to the ACC and go to the Big Ten. That's a challenge, but it's better to be around talent than not be around talent.
Absolutely.
There's going to be some kids who want to, and I know Connecticut has good public high school programs as well, who might be more inclined to go to a Fairfield. So also you look at your conference, no UMass anymore. No Delaware anymore. Hofstra's really down. You're basically competing with Towson. Stony Brook to a degree as well, but I think Stony Brook's got a lot of the problems. A lot of the issues maybe with challenges for Fairfield. I think Stony Brook has for sure. I think Fairfield's I think they're just as good a spot as Stony Brook could be, if not better. And so your league, yes, Towson is always a challenge competing with them, but your league is more open now. Like there's a real lane for you to get right up there with Towson and compete with them, I think, if you've got the right head coach. And also, it should be mentioned, Fairfield has had success before. Like when they first joined the CAA, when Copeland was there, they were, winning 10, 11, 12 games for a couple-year stretch there. And obviously Baxter, wasn't able to maybe get over the hump, but they had a great team in 2025. Won, 12, 13 games like that. So I think this is a job for Durham that makes sense because it's like if you are a ACC coordinator or a Big Ten coordinator and you're looking to make the next step, I think you really want to look for a job that has a job that you feel like if you take it, you can make better. And two, a job that maybe has like an untapped ceiling. And I think Fairfield is one of those programs. I could see Fairfield being in the top 20 really quickly with him there. I mean, we saw them in the top 20 last year. So like, I think it's a feeling of like a program that if you get it right there, I think you can really have success. And so like, again, there's going to be challenges with that being a mid-major, but I think it's the type of job that I think like, yeah, maybe it presents itself now as like top 30, 25, but like kind of like Utah with McMinn a bit. I mean, obviously Utah's a lot different. It's a, packed school, but like with Utah, when we saw it was kind of like, who kind of knows? No conference, different locate, but McMinn got in there right away and it was like, oh, like, yeah, this is what, right, basically immediately took them right to their ceiling. And I think O'Dearna could do that. So I think it makes sense for a job for him to take. Like, if you weren't going to wait for like a Big Ten job to open, which maybe you want to, I do think we're going to see more of these jobs open in the next couple of years. It's just the nature of it. John Donowski's getting up there. Kevin Corrigan's getting up there. John Tillman's, been in Maryland for nearly 20 years now. He's in his late 50s too. These guys ain't going to coach forever. Gary Gates in his early 60s. Like, it's just, these guys aren't going to coach forever. If you weren't, this was the type of job I think to take. Now, let's pivot to the Syracuse end of things. Should I just get right into it? Rip the Band-Aid off and get right into it?
Yeah.
All right, safe. Should Syracuse hire Lars Tiffany as their defensive coordinator?
It would be great content. And it makes a lot of sense. Bring the hometown or region boy back, upstate New York. It would, I think he would relish it to an extent. And it kind of coincides with our theme of, like, if you can get a head coach to take an assistant level position, especially at some of these higher level like programs, you can take that opportunity. I kind of think Scott has the personality to kind of make that work. Maybe wasn't the best idea with Petro in just terms of, like, Petro got his fastball a little bit back at North Carolina, but right after Hopkins, they weren't the great defense, but like Gate understood, like, maybe there's certain things that he was really good at, and that more demonstrative type of archetype of coach, he wasn't going to fit into that. And he's like, you have a guy like Petro there, especially for the first couple seasons, like it did totally make sense. Just didn't really work. Petro probably needed more time off than but he to get, instead of getting right back into the saddle. But it is what it is. But that point still stands, that I think Gate has the emotional intelligence to, like, work with another person who has a big personality. I don't think there's anybody with a bigger personality head coach in coaching than Petro. So if he was able to get through that, and wasn't a complete disaster, but it didn't work as well as I hope, but it wasn't like a absolute abomination. So, and I think Lars, kind of what we felt with, like, Metzbauer. I said, like, when he left and he went to Denver, I was like, I remember talking about it back when we were still writing a little bit. I was like, it felt like there was no better home for him than Denver. Like his former, Don, was at that program. His successor held Metzbauer in such high regard, and it felt like just a great fit, and they worked. They made the Final Four that very first season, and I kind of also felt like probably Metzbauer had again, he's done so much in that he has nothing to prove, but the way that it ended in North Carolina probably gave a little bit of urgency or feeling, and some type of feels, just kind of showing but I haven't lost at all. I haven't lost my fastball, and kind of proved that. And I think Lars, just the storylines of going to Syracuse, that these two programs, their historic rivalry, just high level of play, and then just the story continues for Virginia. Then it would just be like, that will be what people talk about. I can't forget what the schedule was. It at Houston this year, right? Was it at the Dome?
Yes, it'll be in Charlottesville. Oh my God.
It just writes itself, and just the handshake line. I'm just so maybe get too far ahead of myself. But I love the idea. I think it would make sense. Really?
Tell me more.
Here, just to but probably especially if there are certain jobs that you kind of really would like that aren't currently available. Listen, the studio, love that. love to see him as an ESPN, like, either in the booth or, at, the home base, and, when they swing it back to the studio, that kind of thing. I love that for him, especially like the Selection Sunday and the whole tournament. That would be great TV. Or Syracuse. And I think like the Syracuse faithful like would love that, because like I think they got a lot of respect for Lars. I think some of them even like, with the Sun Tzu quote, if you see your enemy making a mistake, don't stop him. And like, say what you Lars, it's a risk to go from him to Cassis, like, again, Cassis could maybe do the good job, like keeping the team together and kids to kind of transfer over, and, made it really solid. So like, it may just go swimmingly, and maybe this was the move. I'm totally wrong. But I still feel like you let a multiple title coach just walk out the door. He's probably going to feel away, and just just the back and forth. I still signed a contract. No, he didn't. Well, we just hired Cassis. Now I'm going to Syracuse. Like it would be great for the game. It would be horrible. I would feel bad for Virginia, but it would be incredible content.
No, I mean, a generational win for content. Like, just truly, like, one of, like, a legendary win for content.
You really didn't need to change the colors. Orange and blue, like, the colors it already looks great. Just put an S in the U, like, oh.
The level, the degree to which it would be an incredible win for content would be indescribable. So
I donate to Syracuse's NIL. Thank you. With that new AD, I like your moxie, sir.
You're gonna get a letter from Bloomberg in the mail, being like, how many times you asked me to give this money, say?
Finally, something I believe in, Mike. Give it here.
So on the one hand, from the content perspective, yes, I need it more than what's that Stone Cold, when he's talking to The Rock, he's like, I need it more than anything you could ever imagine. Like, I mean, I needed to.
We need that. I need that.
Like,
the game needs it.
I would probably bring it up on every podcast from here to the end of I would find something. I would scour the internet for like Lars just quotes.
We might need to get a Virginia fan to join the pod, just to ask him every week.
The amount, like Lars, like jogging through the town, like wearing a Syracuse lacrosse.
Syracuse,
unbelievable.
With the stick.
All the content we got from like Coach O going back to LSU, to be on Lane Kiffin stuff. Like, imagine like this would be like just Lars talking about how proud he would be to recruit with Syracuse across his chest.
The slow-mo bro hug with Gate, like when it comes in to sign.
Oh my God, I can't get enough of this dude. So all this to say, I'm not sure this is a great idea. I get just from it's I'm doing like the Larry David, like Alonzo were like, on the one hand, I look at how awkward the Petro thing was. And just like all the outside noise you got of that, like when like the camera would only pan to Petro on the sideline. They'd find Petro calling or Petro in the huddle. Like, imagine this with Lars. Like they would make like the first Syracuse game on TV. Lars they showed Lars before Gate.
Oh my God.
It's like, I feel like after all that with Petro, do you really want that again? I'm not sure. On the other hand, if you've done it before, like you've done it once already. So,
dude, if you are kind of a CEO type coach, it's the move that you wanted with Petro, but with a better coach at the time that you're going to hire. Like, it pains me to say, love DP, but lost his fastball. I really think maybe took a year off, more time off of it, just to get back into it. But it is what it is. But with Lars, you can't even put him in the press conference, man. Like, the just like really whatever they do, like Monday through Sunday through Saturday, or from Sunday through Friday, he does this thing, and then like Saturday, obviously, he's the head coach, but like after when he imagine as a press conference as the assistant, to just go for hours. But I think like personality wise, I don't see a problem. Like I think Lars is a person that has high emotional intelligence and like can kind of understand when it's going maybe a little too off-putting. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's the reason why he's not Virginia anymore. But
that's the thing. Like your thing of like Lars could like do the press conference. Like that's why I think it's weird. Like
it's just good. Like, he won't. I think like he doesn't need the training wheels, but like I think Lars is just a good coach defensively. Like he's got the talent. If he wants to do it, I don't. Again, do it for the Instagram. Like a picture alone.
If you were Lars, I could see Syracuse doing it. I'm not saying they will. There's other options. Like that's why Travis Crane was the one, honestly, that came to mind for me. Of like, I would try and make it. If I was Syracuse, I would make him say no. But he's, head coaching now. You just look at the other teams with great defenses. John Orson at Denver has been at Denver for a long time, so I'm not sure if he'd be interested in leaving. But he did play at Hofstra, so maybe some there. Kyle Gorgelis at Army is always brought up here, and it never seems like he seems very comfortable there. His name kind of gets brought up for different opportunities a lot. Not sure where do you really go after. Those are kind of the notable ones. Paul Richards at Richmond. I think he's his name was in the mix for Fairfield. And so I think Terry Foy tweeted out that like Richmond was going to commit to kind of keeping him around. So I think there's some notable defensive coordinators out there for sure. But all maybe could be. But Syracuse is as great a coordinator position. Look, I mean, you work for Odearna, obviously. You're in the ACC. Syracuse pays well. But look, I could see it happening for sure. I'm not, I think it's if you've done that move before, the question is, do you feel that it worked? I don't know that they feel it did or it didn't. I think that personally, I thought it was a little just too much noise, and I think it'd be even more now with Lars. We'll have to wait and see. If you were Lars, would you take it or would you wait a year and see if something doesn't open up next year?
I would wait a year. Because who knows what I think we never really got into, I know in the DMs, but we were talking about the contract issue with them. Like there's a couple main issues, but like I think at the end of the day, like especially if there's like promissory estoppel was the idea. Like if you relied on what he thought was a contract to like say no to some interviews, say problem is like is there actually a contract official? Like with the state university, there's a lot of things you got to like hoops. Even though you sign something as you would ride note, I remember actually it was on one of your solo ones. It could have been more of a memorandum of understanding that would go through the process. But we still noted in the Terry Foy article about that the announcement that Lars's lawyer had noted that he did sign a contract. Like while he had signed that second contract that he had with UVA in 2021 was it? The announcement wasn't until the following year. It seemed.
And the main thing with the contract was, which this came out in the reporting by Terry, I think Dan Oresti as well. The claim, at least from Virginia's end of it, is that the contract did not have a counter execution line. So Lars signed, but it didn't have a spot for Virginia to respond in time itself. So, but yeah, I think that's a fair point you make of like letting that whole process play out.
Yeah, so it could be like a settlement in there, kind of take care for a bit for this year. I would love him to go to TV. I think he's just absolutely would just be electric on the like what I love him to call some games.
Yes.
Lars calling games and just like going some battles, just like it's just him. I can see him and Quint just really going well together. You have to have like a play-by-play guy, but like not that I want to break it up or whatever. I'm just saying like I think Lars is a weapon. In terms of when it comes to TV, like he just can connect through that medium, and I think he would. I think it would just be electric on TV. I would love to see him get a deal with one of the network, Big Ten network, whatever. Like just one of those networks. Call some games, get like 4 or 5 games, and ideally like with ESPN. Not that I'm partial to whatever, but like just because I want to see him in the tournament. I would love to see him like Selection Sunday tournament. I just think Lars is magic on the mic, and him on TV would just make sense. So it just is a medium for him. Really connect him. So, second, reason why I think, as you absolutely hit the point, we are getting to a point like eventually some of these jobs are. It really goes back to your Fife's point. It really is just about timing. The Fife's had a good tenure as a head coach at Vermont, but just the timing for those jobs just wasn't there. And maybe for the next 10 years here, those jobs, just the age of some of these coaches that can't coach forever. Even Tierney tried it. He eventually had to. But that was kind of a biggish job. Top 12, top 13 type job.
Yeah.
So but that again, how long was he? When did he go to 2011? He went there.
Who? What do you mean?
Tierney to Denver.
2009.
2009. So even for him, that was 13, 14 years before he left. And he was kind of risen. That was a little bit older, when he left. So, but this is the time period where we would see some of those transitions. And sitting a year, especially if you get a job on TV, then potentially next year some of these jobs will open up more. And I think you're just always out there, whenever there is jobs or something stuff happens. Coaches step down, coaches leave. Doesn't not all the time, especially these big time jobs, but things do happen. And then you're just in case of emergency, break glass. There he is, Lars Tiffany, 2-time national champion, a handful of Quantum Force. He's going to pass any, review or interview I have. You're going to fall in love with the guy. So. I don't know. I think his value increases. I don't think it decreases. Going to Syracuse at all, I think it could work. But scarcity, absence, there's a chance people forget you. But if you can get yourself on TV, for me, that's
The one I look at is, listen, you don't want to kind of jump ahead here. Nick Meyer's contract is up next year. I don't know. I'm not suggesting, but we're going to talk about Ohio State. He's going to have a whole new staff. It has been a minute. That's a program that is putting money in. Look Lars at any top job makes sense. Lars in the Big Ten really feels to make sense to me. Just kind of is
Jim Tressel on steroids, dude. It would just oh God, with that money, I could just see him in red.
I know. The only thing I know is he thinks very, very highly of the University of Michigan. And so I'm not saying Connery, is in trouble or anything like that. But him at a Big Ten school feels like I think he'd have a lot. I think he'd love that. So I would probably wait and see if like you said, him being out there is just a sword of Damocles, just hanging. Why would you not? Again, whatever we want to say about what happened to him, he had a team that was the 5th seed in the NCAA tournament this year. If this is Lars's floor, I mean, it's a pretty good floor to have, and we know his ceiling. So I'd probably wait because I do think the opportunities are going to come up. The SMU thing is out there. If that comes to fruition. So I think he'd probably relish that opportunity as well. There's
to come back to the ACC where the school just flush with cash. I mean, like, if SMU thinks that cash can solve anything in Atlantic Coastal Conference, they're absolutely right. They're 100% correct. They're going to do fine.
They bought their way in.
Exactly. It's just like you're going to fit right in this place. Like,
oh man, that's the thing. I just think there's too many options out there for him to jump into the, and like, look, obviously he could leave, but I just think it makes sense to reset for a year, see the landscape. But look, am I gonna complain if I wake up tomorrow and he's the defensive coordinator at Syracuse? No, not one bit. I'll actually be celebrating that. Just look, we're in the content business, and Lars is great content, and Lars at Syracuse is great content. Lars is great content. That symbiosis would be amazing. All right, next one up. Boy, I tell you, I'd been thinking like the other week. I was like, it's been a really quiet off season in Maryland, and I wasn't totally shocked by it. I didn't figure they'd make big moves in the transfer portal. I know they have a lot of kind of young pieces coming in that feel like they kind of need some playing time. Their season obviously ended over a month ago, so it felt like if something was going to happen, it would happen soonish. But instead, in the span of one weekend, we found out the Terps added 2 players in the transfer portal: Ryan D'Amato from UMBC. Most notably, they added Garrett Haas from Ohio State, which is a pretty substantial move that, I'll be honest, I did not see coming. I think it's interesting. We'll talk a bit more about that later, but interesting, a bold move from Tillman. I think there's some risk attached to it, but I understand it from the perspective of Maryland needs a guy who can play behind the cage, and they need a guy with his kind of speed, and he brings the type of player that they just simply have not had over the past couple of years. So I definitely get it from that point of view. And then Sunday night, it comes out that Mike Phipps is moving on from Maryland and moving on from coaching as well. We've talked quite a bit about Mike Phipps on the show this year. Mike Phipps is a great guy. I think really highly Mike Phipps. Mike Phipps was in the coaching profession for a long time. He was at Navy a couple different stints. Most notably, after he left Navy this past go around, there was the Joe Amplo quote from when he left, which was, and I quote, "I'm glad Michael got what he wanted." He helped Warren at Georgetown kind of build up that program there. Had success on Sol's staff first go around. Maryland guy, I know he was very happy to kind of be back in Maryland. This was a marriage that it wasn't working. And we talked about that. It was just evident that who's responsible to me didn't really matter as much as, like, if the offense was as bad as it was for Maryland this past year, something wasn't working. Personnel obviously was part of that. Phipps probably plays a part in that too. John Tillman is an offensive-minded head coach who has a big say in how Maryland's offense runs. He has, part to play in that as well. If you ask me personally, I think that more of the ledger falls on Tillman, just because I know the role that he has in the offense, which he's always had. And that's not to say that he doesn't let the coaches do their job, but he had a big part to play in designing the offense we saw in 21 and 22. Tillman did a lot of work with J.L. Reppert in designing that offense in 2020. And then when Reppert left, he brought Bobby Benson in, and Benson was like it was like kerosene onto, like, the fire was like there. Bobby was, adding kerosene to it. And that was a perfect marriage. In addition, I look at just the way in which this offense played and how it functioned in terms of the deliberateness, in terms of not manufacturing as many goals from transition, and just kind of being very wary of turnovers and things like that. Those are Tillman hallmarks. In some cases it works great. In 2025, this marriage worked perfectly. Maryland knew how they wanted to play. They matched their offense to that defensive core with McNaney and Schaller, and it worked perfectly. This year, with different personnel, I think personnel that was needed to play faster, and also a defense that, while still very good, didn't have Logan McNaney and lost Will Scheller halfway through the season. It wasn't the same core back there to try and this wasn't the Maryland team to win games 10-9, 11-8, things like that. I needed to try and score more, and it didn't. I think more of that was on Tillman's end, but the bottom line is, like, it wasn't working with Tillman and Phipps. And when that's the case, I think a change was probably for the best. I didn't think he was going to be fired because Tillman has never really fired assistants. I think it was always going to be a different opportunity. It seems like he's got an opportunity outside of coaching that is going to be well for him. And again, Mike Phipps was a good coach for a long time. He was particularly a very good recruiter when he was at Navy and I was at Georgetown. This is an interesting. It's a very interesting position. This is the most important offseason that Maryland's had under John Tillman. I think this is the offseason that will ultimately decide the rest of his tenure. We might not see the fruits of that this year, but whether or not Maryland is able to get back to the heights of 2017 through 2022, that kind of, or 2016 to that sort of 6-7 year, run where they were the top program in the sport is going to be decided on this offseason. Or are they maybe going to become, just one of 5 or 6 really good programs? It's hard to sustain greatness over. I mean, they were the abnormality in how long they sustained that greatness. Other programs have come for have knocked on the door. Notre Dame, Virginia came for a time, kind of put it down. Notre Dame has come and seems to be sticking there. Princeton's obviously ascending. So, but I think this is the offseason that really decides it. It didn't work this year. That's the bottom line. There were a lot of things I think responsible for why it didn't work this year, which we've talked about. But when you have the expectations, like even if you were someone who says Maryland, the expectations were maybe too high, that means maybe you thought they should have been like ranked 3rd or 4th, or they should have been a top 5 team, not miss the NCAA tournament. Like that, just none of it worked in the way that it was supposed to. And so I think they need to kind of rethink a lot of different things, from when they introduce guys, kind of redshirting guys versus playing them. The offense is obviously a big part of that. Style of play, just all sorts of different things. Maybe the schedule, who knows? Is this, if you are a coach and that John Tillman has a sizable role to play has a sizable voice in the offense, and you've seen how it went for Phipps, perhaps you saw how it kind of went with Jake Bernhardt the past couple of years. Are you as eager to jump into this as it may seem on paper? This is an obviously great job. Bobby Benson parlayed this into a head coaching job. J.L. Repper parlayed this into a head coaching job. Ryan Moran parlayed this into Pat Spencer and then a head coaching job. Being on John Tillman's staffs generally has worked out very well. It's going to pay well. Again, we talked about it. There's only so many of these Big Ten ACC positions that come open. But, it's how much of a role are you going to have in sort of crafting your offense versus how much are you working with Tills in that? That doesn't have to be a bad thing. I'm not saying like John Tillman's coached a lot of amazing offenses, so it's not a bad thing that he has a role to play in that. He's a Hall of Fame coach for a reason. I'm just pointing out that if I think there's maybe a concern here, it's that is this job as good as it appears on paper? I think is maybe a question.
So I have a couple of thoughts. I want to shout out, I think this is the friend of the show, Wheels. I think he's the same author of the 247sports.com article on Tillman that was up.
Yes, he is.
Just want to shout out to him, just friend of the show, but just a great post. Really, really enjoyed reading it. Kind of echoed a lot of the themes and points that you've been making, Jake, throughout the year, that, it may be a little bit easy to kind of point at these 3 years of lackluster, lethargic Wheels used in his post, years under Phipps. The numbers have not been great. Its offenses, this is directly from the article, during Phipps' 3-year coaching tenure at College Park, its offense ranged from statistically middling to very good. The 2026 unit, one that began the season as the top ranked in the nation, finished with just 10.8 goals per game, good for 46th in the nation, on a 23rd best offensive efficiency. Listeners and fans of the show will remember that I thought that this thing was going to be the 2020.
Listen, dude.
I saw the pieces, Jake.
I picked Eric Spanos to win the Toraton Award.
But again, but you can't really like just kind of say, "Oh, it's all Phipps' fault," because it's more than a replacement level coach. He's a very good to great the assistant coach.
And it should be mentioned. I think you might have brought this up. I just stepped away.
Yeah,
the offense in 2023 before he came in wasn't great either.
That's exactly what Bill Wheels was going to lead into.
2023, it wasn't great. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, just want to give him his kudos. In fairness to Phipps, is again from Wheels. In fairness to Phipps, the Terps' offensive output rapidly declined since the high water marks of 2021 and 2022. Teams that scored 15.9, 17.7 goals per game, respectively. 2023 offense scored just 12.3 goals per game. And I just want to kind of feel like Maryland, for the stature of the program and as good as almost every other aspect, once a week, those Rambo teams, those kind of, and again, even the 2021, the Bernhard teams, all of the Wisnowski's teams, like they
run offensively, yeah. Like this is what I think is worth mentioning. It's like people kind of, sorry to cut you off, but people, like are very quick with Tillman to jump on like, oh, he's playing slow again, or it's like here's the run they had offensively from 2016 through 2022 in offensive efficiency. Let's do this. 9th, 2nd, 5th, 8th, 9th, 2nd, 1st. The offense was great for nearly a decade. I mean, and even 2015, 16th. Not bad. The last 4 years are the outlier here, really, in his tenure. 21st, 22nd. Again, I mentioned 2025 worked. They were 8th. I'm not saying if it was a little bit better, do they win the championship? Probably. But I thought for the personnel they had, I thought they did really well that year. Then back to 23rd. Even if you just dive in with like, how many times the past couple years have I mentioned the shooting? 33rd in shooting percentage this year. 2025, they were 17th in shooting percentage. 2024 and 2023, it gets a little, 34th in 2024. 2023, they were 44th, shot 29%. 2022 and 2021, I don't even mention it. They shot like 40%, which is obscene. It is never going to happen again. But even if I go back to 2019, they shot, see if I can get up here. They were 3rd in the country in 2019. They shot 35%. So like it's what's happened the past couple of years with the offense is, yes, some of the issues are some of the issues that have been reoccurring with when Tillman's offenses struggle. That's just kind of how things work. You generally, when you don't do as well, it's because of the things you don't do as well. But it's not like we're talking about like offense hasn't been, like you mentioned. I mean, they had 3 Toraton winners in like a 5-year stretch.
Yeah.
I mean, they were churning out all PLL All-Stars every year.
It may not have been, and I don't want to discredit it, as aesthetically like pleasing as some, because I think a lot of it was just narrative. Like people just wouldn't give up this low ball narrative that Maryland kind of had when it was pre-shot clock, and Tillman cared more about winning than your sensibilities about what you feel like an offense should look like, and they did what they needed to do and get the Final Fours and championship games. And once he finally got the talent that he wanted on offensive end, he could show you that he could cook. And that run from 2014, 15 through 2022, it's been incredible. And that's my point. It's just like, yeah, they didn't have like the offense, like kind of the Princeton. I guess the way I'm describing, just like lethal, like everyone has a degree of doubt. But Maryland was the hitters, like they were scoring goals, like they were putting pressure on you.
Play as fast. That's it. It's just they just did not play as fast.
It was it's just a little bit slower gear, and it's not like they couldn't play that. I think it's just like we'd rather just be controlled and composed, and eventually you're going to wilt under their pressure, defensive pressure, and their consistency on offense. But they were putting balls in the back of the net. That's my point. Like, that's the one thing they just weren't doing. Like, it still had the look of Maryland. They not the unnecessarily fast, up tempo offense, but they just. The shooting percentage wasn't there. Just didn't feel like really
sloppy. For as much as they tried to get away with not turnovers, sloppy.
There was a lot of trying to do what they were doing in 21, 22. Those intricate tick, tick, tock, tock, tock. Bang, 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 and it's just. What we said, the game's changed in 21, 22. Yep. Like, it's hard to get into the paint. Yes. It's harder to get, like, these guys are just better. They understand angles and stuff like that. They're just like, teams are quicker to go to zone. If you're not identifying that, and like, there's just defense have adjusted to the shot clock era. And I'm not saying they have the upper hand now, but it is more difficult to score. Again, no excuses for Trump. He's the best coach job really in the country. I think in terms of like resources, the hotbed, salary, just stature, stuff like that. So what I was going to get to, we're kind of detoured all of this, like John Galloway. I know he's not a Maryland guy, but like I'm looking at head coaches.
Not defensive minded coach, right? Wouldn't he?
So he's a goalie. Like
I mean, his offenses have been good, but he's generally been a defensive-minded head coach. I mean, he's a goalie, so I don't know if he has the offensive. Yeah, I see what you're going for here. I guess here's my thing with sitting head. I actually looked at this. The only coaches who I'm looking at who have been offensive, who have had success. Offensive minded, like they kind of fit that. John Crawley at High Point. I don't think so. I don't think he'd take it. He's been there just a couple years. I don't think that's the move they'd make. Matt Carwick at Colgate has had success. That style of offense is just so antithetical to what Tillman does, though. Would you ask Reppert to come back? He's been at Holy Cross for a minute. It has, like, I hate to just kind of like, would you rather be the offensive coordinator at Maryland or the head coach at Holy Cross? I mean, I know he made that decision once, but I guess this gets down to the other one I'll mention.
Stephen Boyle.
Again. I don't think he's going to – I'm not saying he'd be averse to going in this direction because I don't think he would be. I just don't know if there's the options out there that kind of fit. I mean –
sorry, you were saying your guy?
No, but I'll bring up one that I know a lot of people are going to bring this one up. I don't know if it's going to I think there's a chance. Part of me has a hard time seeing it, but I wouldn't rule it out, is Ryan Moran. Just because it's happened before. I mean, they've worked together before. On the other hand, it kind of stopped working before too, when Moran left to go to Loyola. So I don't know. I don't think the UMBC, I don't know what impact that would have at all, if any. But I know I've seen people bring it up. Should he or would he hire Moran? I think he could. I think if it's going to be a sitting head coach, or I guess formerly, more recently, I think Moran is probably the most likely outcome. Just because they've worked together before, knows what he wants, things like that. Again, I think this again to me gets into. There's also this goes back to my point of when I was mentioning earlier, just feels like there's more defensive head coaches, kind of mid-majors right now than there are there's not a lot of offensive guys who. I mean, there are, but it's who is it that's going to take Dan Shamati's an offensive guy. He's not, he's not going to take the job. But even some other ones, Like if I just ran down a list of like, like Matt Carwick, sort of makes sense. Crawley, I don't see it. Poley, no, I don't think so. Scott Maher, no. McMinn, no. So the offensive coaches who are at the mid-major level, I think are at jobs a little too that they wouldn't take it. And I also just think look, at the end of the day, it's all about what is Tillman what is he trying to do here? Is he looking at this as like we need to kind of make he was not against in his post like end of season press conference. He wasn't averse. He didn't sound averse to changes. He sounded open to it. He did say he didn't, he thought overhaul was a little too like, too radical, I guess, of a sentence, I suppose. But is he looking to make significant changes, or is he looking to bring someone in who can bring someone in more like Bobby, maybe, like who he could really, is like a kind of marriage of sort of equals, in a sense, of like someone in who kind of matches his wavelength, who I think he really respects. He like at that sort of level, like he really, really respected Bobby Benson. I'm not saying there's a Bobby Benson necessarily out there. Or is he looking to more bring in someone who he thinks can kind of operate and work how he wants it to work? I think that's the question. If I had to bet, I would say it's probably going to be Mike Janachuk.
I was going to say.
Just because that's generally been how Tillman's gone for it. Janachuk's been a good offensive coordinator. From a recruiting perspective, he makes some sense because he's got inroads to Long Island. I think he'd have success there. I think that's most likely. If you ask me for who I'm of two minds here. I want them to do something a little bit different. I want them to kind of do sort of what they did with Bobby. Didn't make a bunch of changes. He made small things that elevated the pizza. Basically, the pizza was already made. Bobby sort of was like, what if we added this? Like this would give it a real kick. But I do want someone. The thing that Bobby had was that Tillman really respected him, and it allowed that to be a perfect marriage. I want someone who he really, I think, respects and can be empowered to make changes as they see fit. So, like our good pal Matt Jacobson, who's a Terp alum, asked us this. He asked basically 5 questions. First, who do I think it's going to be? I think it's going to be Janachuk. Who should it be? If they're going to, he's not going to leave that job.
I was just saying, who should? Someone who respects.
All right.
Someone like who delivers.
If we're operating in like, I'll go. I think
in reality, yeah, you're right. It's not coming.
Who should it be? Who should it be? I got 3 names. If you want to go the alum path, I think they need to go try and get John Haas out of Penn State.
Oh, yeah.
That's the one to me that is like, I look at Penn State and they were one of like to me, when I watched offenses this year, I was like, who felt like they were doing something different and who felt like they were really straining defenses week after week. Every week, who felt like they were just dealing with that offense was was just a bear. Princeton was obviously one. Penn State is the other. Penn State was one was like, man, they're throwing waves of guys at you. They were willing to. In some ways, it did cost them. We talked about the amount of turnovers they gave up against Princeton, but like they were willing to play so loose and so free, and it allowed it. They played with it's such a great tempo and aggressiveness. Again, an alum, I think he's a guy who could come in, who Tillman knows, maybe be on that wavelength, but can bring in his own ideas from having worked with TAMS. You're kind of Maryland and Penn State have kind of had this, I think, a little bit where they've kind of fed off each other in some of how they operate because they've generally been at the top. I think right now Penn State's kind of got a leg up. Take a little bit from them. John Haas would be my pick if they were going to hire an alum. Now, listen, is it going to be tough to get? Would it be tough to get him out of Penn State? Yes, but maybe he's an alum. Maybe you could pay better. We'll see. Second, I don't think it's going to be him, but I really love what Neil Hutchinson's done at Harvard. I think that offense is terrific. I love just the way that they disguise and set up their dodges and they use their pick game. That offense is unpredictable. Unpredictability, I think, is good for an offense. All right, so if you said let's operate in the what's the operating reality? I don't think it's going to happen, but it's the dream scenario.
Just because I think
yeah, I know it's not. That's not it. But I'll give you the.
It tied in a lot of our themes. Head coach.
I'll give you unlikely. Small chance it happens. I know Tillman thinks very, very highly of him. I know that they've talked to him before. I would love it. Is it going to happen? I will say no, but maybe there's a 10% chance. They talked to Jim Mitchell in 2023. I know that Jim Mitchell thinks highly of them. They think very highly of him. Do I think Jim Mitchell is going to leave Princeton? No, I don't see any reason why. But maybe if you pay him more and maybe the spotlight at Maryland in a Big Ten job is a better path to a head coaching job than Princeton offensive coordinator. Do I think that's really the case? Maybe not, but I'm trying to strain myself into, creating reasons why it won't happen. Do I think what happened? No. But if you're giving me the fantasy type, that would be it. Just because I know that Tillman does think super highly of him. I know that they have talked to him before. I know that he said no. But that would be the one.
No,
if we're going off of unlikely, but maybe there's a small chance, and at least I know that it's someone that Tillman definitely thinks highly of, he would be the one.
Well, I mean, long time listeners probably mistake me for Jim Mitchell's agent. But yeah, any big time, I'm always throwing his name in there. And I think that would be a great, again, it goes to your point of I mean this in a comment, but it's almost like a predator. You know what I mean? The lion that said, you're gonna need to be able to. He's going to be able to respect you for the relationship to really work. And I think the peaks that he's had, over his tenure in Maryland, kind of show that. The coaches that he has the best relationship with, they've really did something amazing. They left
Jesse.
Yeah, it felt like they left because it was just great opportunity. He was like the Bill Belichick or Nick Saban, of the modern day coaching tree. If you wanted to get a big time job, you worked with John Tillman for 2 or 3 years, and you'll have a big time job, or at least a head coaching job at the very least. And so, if you're someone like Mitchell, if you're you're trying to get into this conference, and not you're doing too shabby in the Ivy League already, you're a national champion. Come back with a loaded squad, even with some important departures, and the number 1 recruiting class. It could be worse, as we always jokingly say. But yeah, if you kind of want to be in this neighborhood, and meaning the Big Ten or ACC, getting a job at a program like Maryland, where the spotlight shines very, very bright, they're always going to be in the hunt for Big Ten, AQ, have the cachet to be able to schedule big time marquee games to also get that spot in at large. Again, Princeton's not worried too much about that. They're doing well, so it's not like they're in a major conference where they have to win the tournament every year to get in. They're going to have their shots, and now there's a national champion. Everyone's trying to try to play them, so they're not going to have a problem filling out their schedule. But yeah, it's hard to get into these, and sometimes, being in that circle already as an assistant, you can lead. It doesn't always, Bobby didn't get a Big Ten job. Montgomery did. Warren didn't get a Big Ten job, but that's not bad.
It's all about the window in which it's all about the cycle. You got to strike while the iron's hot.
And if this is that phase where you're going to see some openings, like some jobs open up, if you want to kind of, get in their faces in a good way, in terms of being on the opposing team, they're man, we wish we had that offense, and that's how it all starts. If they see you open their team, they're going to be man, what are we doing here? We got to get some. They're Steve Mitchell's available, and especially going from a championship at Maryland, at Princeton, And then if you like did move to Maryland and then they just snap right back to the Final Four next year, like there would be no one hotter for an assistant than him. So, but if you want to bet on yourself, like he did, leaving like Bellarmine, 3 weeks into September for the first job, as soon as it opened up, like that worked out for him. Again, like it's hard to be like, how much I love it, but it's ran there this afternoon before the pot. Like it's kind of a dream place to like coach or send your kid to school. It's just like this, pristine, wonderful little town. So like it's not going for it. But again, well, have some aspirations, becoming a head coach at a Big Ten school, being on conciliary to John Tillman. It's going to open some doors, especially if he has the success that he's already had at Princeton and he's able to replicate that at Maryland. That's what it would be, because then it would be like a demarcation line. 3, bang, 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 the monster team, a little bit of a these last 2 years, and then bang, monster team, and it would just be like, again, his name would be the hottest assistant in Division One.
Yes, I don't think it's gonna. He would be the kind of like dream back there. I think Chanchuk is most likely. Wild card would be Logan Wisnauskas, who's at Brown. I just think that's too soon, and I think Logan Wisnauskas will be a great head coach. I have everything about him as a player would indicate he would be a great head coach, or a great offensive coordinator, great head coach. I just think it's too soon, and I just feel like. I feel like that's the worry of like Tillman clearly has the hands on the wheel there. Like it's just and Logan's kind of to me he just needs more marinating. In a couple years I think he'd be a great candidate. Right now I just think it's too. I think it'd be too soon.
Well, the one thing if you did like Connor, like the volunteer assistant, then turns into a paid gig.
Look, he's at a good spot now with Brown being the offensive coordinator. Like I think that's a great. I do expect he'll move up the ladder soon. I think Brown's poised to have a good team next year. So I think again, Logan Wisnauskas is going to be a very good head coach if he chooses to stay down that path. I just think for Maryland it'd be too soon. So. Yeah, wild card abuse Wisnauskas, sitting head coach. I just don't really see a lot of options there. I don't really know. Moran is the one I would point to. James Purpura kind of fits within that. He just left Ohio State. I don't know if someone would have interest there. But I do. He did a great job at VMI. I know it didn't go well at Ohio State at all this year. But we talked about the offense was bad. How much of that you put down to Purpura? How much you put down to Myers? That could be another case of just a marriage not working. But he also did a good job with that offense in 2025. So Chanchuk's probably most likely. If you're asking me who I would want, I am a big fan of what Hutchinson's done at Harvard. Hutchinson is also a Maryland guy, so just kind of worth pointing that out. Contract him, John Haas as well. Haas would also be the one I would I think he fits to me the best of all the worlds. I think it's probably Chanchuk, but. We'll have to kind of wait and see how that plays out. All right, last one is Ohio State. Well, this caught off guard. Ohio State's entire coaching staff is leaving. I feel like that community meme where I forget his name now. The comes in with the pizza boxes and the everything's fired. Like Donald Glover. Donald Glover come back from Sweden. like, hey Jake, what's going on? Like everyone's left Ohio State safe. I'm like, what's going on? This is funny. I texted some of this. I'm like, Ohio State's entire coaching staff just quit, and they were like they read it as Myers also had left. And I was like, well, not yet, but like everybody else. So
again, I'm not saying they resigned and protest, but it feels like when something bad happens and then the top executive leave, for moral reasons, or you're I just got to get out. And they all leave in unison. Kind of. I don't know if you watched the most recent episode of season of Industry, but or I think it was last year where the guy from Game of Thrones, what's his name? Jon Stark.
Kit Harington, yeah.
He was his startup company was like collapsing, and it's like CFO like announced his resignation because of like how they essentially lied about like their IPO numbers, and he goes like, oh, how noble. It's just like the timing leaving the ship while I was sinking. But yeah, like I've never seen the entire coaching staff. Well,
so I have
of almost any sport I can't think of. Like,
say if I got a lot of. So this was reported by Inside the Crosse, and it mentioned that Travis Crane, his fiance lives in Maryland. They're due to get married soon here. Travis Crane had been with Nick Myers for a long time, over 10 years. Was the longest tenured member of the staff. He chose that boy. Justin Toomba, I mentioned, has 2 young kids. He's choosing, I guess, step away, maybe spend focus more on that. Obviously, coaching's a difficult, profession in that regard. James Purpura is just leaving. Like it literally said he's pursuing other opportunities, either as as the head coach or offensive coach. So his current job right now.
It's down for anything.
Well, it's just the way it was framed in the article was like there's context for these moves. It's like Purpura's context is just he wants another job. he just wants to leave. The reason I'm sort of saying this is because I agree. I'm sure there is context for all of this, and I'm sure that like those motivations for those guys were correct. But it's like if they were paying them really good money, like the Travis Crane one again, I don't know. I'm just like, if it made sense financially, would she just not move to Columbus? Like, part of it to me just feels like I think all the Justin Toomba one too. It's like, I'm sure he definitely has something lined up outside of coaching, but it's he has 2 young kids. It's like, well, you need a job with 2 young kids. I just feel like if everything was great and the money made sense and the current, as we're talking about these trends right now, if everything made sense, I feel like they'd still be there.
Yeah.
It's like if they went to Travis Crane, we're like, we're going to make you one of the 5 highest paid assistant coaches in Division I. I think he probably stays. Basically it's like I believe all these. I believe all of these motivations to be correct. Also, they feel like things that are workable around if you're willing to, make it work or give them enough, enough money, enough of a, elevation up to the next sort of ladder, like Travis Crane. It feels like Travis Crane has had one of the best defense in the country this year. One of the best defenses in the country for the past couple of years. His name is just not in the mix for a head coaching job, it feels like. Why is it the case? I don't know. Maybe it's because of Ohio State's lack of success overall. And it's like, from Purpura's point of view, it's sort of like you leave VMI to go to Ohio State to raise your for the same reasons O'Dearna did, raise your profile to get a head coaching job. For better or for worse, his profile was not being raised because the story of Ohio State this year was the offense is a disaster. And so it's like, I believe that there's context for all these. I feel like some missing context is like something clearly had to not be working for your entire staff to leave. Like that, it's just, and maybe that's with Myers. Maybe that's just the administration not providing enough in salary or support or things like that. They weren't doing enough to where those guys wanted to stay. Something had to not be right for everybody on staff to leave. On June 17th, like when recruiting's underway, like recruiting's getting going and they don't have a staff.
Listen, it wasn't great. I mean, maybe it was just his brevity at the program. not even acknowledging purple. It's
Nothing.
not there.
Nothing.
It's crazy because it's like a huge banner. We love you, Travis Crane. Thank you for everything you've done here. Like, big thank you to Tuba, like in big bold letters, like got Myers in there. I mean, I guess that's kind of reflective of their bad offensive season. Like it wasn't working. Like in him just saying, "I'm just out of here." There was like no clarification needed. Like well, this guy's got a baby. This guy's doing something. Like Purple's just like, "Hey, I'm just fine. I'm just looking for something else." Not a great look for the program. As you're noted, like what's part of your selling? Like I can't wait for you to be implemented in Coach X's offense once I hire him. like how are you going to finish that sentence if you're Myers when you're in someone's living room? Coupled with, I mean, it's so hard to confirm these for sure, but we were pretty sure that his contract is ending next year, which means
Yes.
Head coach going into next season without
with no staff.
No staff. That's one thing. It's one thing to do a brush sheet, bet on yourself and get re-upped. It's just like it's another thing to do it with that starting point of you just being the only. It's like the Will Smith meme of him at the end of Fresh Prince. Like we got Myers in the coaching room. So don't take glee in this at all. Like I was joking around, no one supported Ohio State emotionally and financially as much as I have. In the last 5 years, I tried to tamp it down until they show back the last couple of years. But Mars is out there. That's how it's going to be like this entire year. Like, Mars is out there. So
I genuine and also this is a staff that's had lots of turnover before. Rick Lewis was on staff for a couple of years before. I think 3 years before leaving for Army, which is when Purpura came in. Pardon me. Tuma kind of was there and then left and came back. Chavoster can be on staffs. Like they've had turnover more than kind of the norm. This is now they're going on 3 offensive coordinators this decade. Can be multiple volunteer assistants and. Also, guys not leaving for it's one thing when you have turnover when guys leave for head coaching jobs. It's different when you have turnover when guys leave for lateral jobs or unknown. I mean, again, the Purpura thing. I'm sure he will get a job, but it's not like it wasn't like he's going to this job. It's like he's just gonna go find another job.
He's looking.
Right now, he is unemployed.
Where are you going? Don't worry about it.
Don't call me.
Can you imagine that exit interview? Like, oh my God, just need a reference? I'm okay.
I don't. Also, 15 kids dropped off the roster. The assumption, or at least word going around, has been that they were basically cut, which is because the House settlement put the roster limit down to 48, which is all right. It's also you can't. We known that was coming for a couple years. Just having to. I mean, there weren't notable names. Again, they were kind of just guys who lost their scholarship or lost a roster spot basically. Part of life, but it still is wow. That coupled with the turnover is pretty. Just again, we talk about all these trends are kind of working at play. It feels like Ohio State is a culmination of all of them. If you don't feel like you have the opportunity for advancement, you're not feeling like the job is raising your profile, and maybe it's a difficult. You're not feeling that. It just is. Tough season, maybe all sorts of the things like that. Another disappointing season. All feels like those came together here to lead to. Again, I get it. I'm not. It's Ohio State, dude. If they can find money in the couch cushions. Travis Crane had the best defense in the country. If they made Travis Crane the best defensive coordinator in the country, the highest paid defensive coordinator in the country, paid him $200,000 a year. I kind of feel like his fiance could move to Columbus, Ohio. Like, and listen, maybe he's got a great opportunity somewhere else. I'm not disputing that at all, but it's pretty. It's one of those things, it feels like an addendum, It's like, in addition, their family situations are yada yada. Like, it feels like things we could make work.
Backfilling the reason after making the decision.
Oh man.
No, it's accurate, but this probably goes to what our point that we've been saying. Like, you're not in the position to enact those changes because maybe the program's not looking at the top of the organization long term. Maybe this is just a way for you to say why you're leaving, because you may not see yourself being there a year from now.
Yeah. All right, that's all the move. Let's wrap this up with kind of, I guess, what I've said was kind of a culmination of things. Say if you tell me where you think I'm hitting, or maybe I'm missing on something. I think the combination of quiet head coaching cycles the past few years, in some cases like just non-existent, has led to kind of a crunch. There's a lot of really quality coaches at the mid-major level who just haven't been able to move up. Maybe they haven't been able to move up from a what we call maybe a low major, like an America East or MAC or something like that, to, I think Keegan Wilkinson's a great example of this. Like a coach who did a great job at a MAC school, but didn't get an opportunity at a CAA school or a Big E school or something like that. Or a mid-major coach, a high major, not getting the chance at a power program. Couple that with the broader trends in coaching college sports, the transfer portal, having to fight to not just recruit your guys, but re-recruit your guys. The uncertainty at some of these kind of private schools in the Northeast with enrollment cliffs and things like that. The new changes with how you mentioned house settlement, rev share, Big Ten ACC schools funding 30 scholarships. It was hard to compete before when they had 13, 14, 15, maybe up to 20, and you gave out 5 or 6. What do you do now when they're giving out 30 and you're giving out 6 or none maybe none in some cases? And then I think just kind of like the synergy and when you combine those two together, it creates, a situation like Chris Pfeif's, who missed out on a chance to move up the ladder, didn't get openings right as the game really shifted in 2020 and 2021 with the COVID, the transfer portal, and then the scholarship, NIL and things like that. If you missed your window, you missed your boat, the boat doesn't come back around a second time, and you see your job actively getting more difficult around you. It feels to me like now these coaches are in a position of like, if I'm not moving up, I probably should get out. And they see that. So as you mentioned, the opportunities to get out are high school, these kind of private high school, Keegan Wilkinson did that. Or if I want to still move up, my opportunity to move up is better at an ACC or Big Ten coordinator position than it is a mid-major. And I think that's or if you're an assistant, particularly assistant jobs in particular are really tough. If I don't see the opportunity for advancement, how much longer can I make? Like I saw, Lemoyne, which, that was another job we mentioned just opened. They made the posting for the job. It listed a salary of $75,000. I mean, in this economy, like that's just really hard. So I think all those things, when you kind of crunch them all together, I think it's led to the situation we have now.
Absolutely. Just so many vectors coming at coaching and schools. So many things coming from different vectors. Coaching in schools, that it's kind of difficult for the small programs. And if you're a coach out there, like you got to make a choice. And it's like kind of been there for 5, 6, 7 years and just not really happening. And if it is, it's still not going to happen for another 3 or 4 years. And even getting noticed once those opportunities open up, you have to also be lucky enough to be in kind of like the right, the eyesight. When someone's you have to be. That's why I think like with Wife's going to UVA. Like, yeah, it's kind of what Cassis said. Cassis said like my goal when I went to UVA was that when these jobs don't open up often. And I do love his quote. I hope I don't betray it. But they do not open often, but when they do, I want to be in the position, whether they be North Carolina, Duke, Virginia, whatever. And I'm pretty sure the Virginia, whatever, for sure was in that quote. I think I may have both of the other schools correct.
Oh
but
God.
yeah, it's just opportunity, luck, right? Where they say it's just opportunity meeting, preparation. So yeah, sometimes it really is just being at the right place at the right time. And we kind of see, especially with a lot of schools, like once you maybe make a change, one of the first places you're going to look is internally also. Madeline got it.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite calls. It's kind of because he's got it. Once you kind of leave a program, or when someone like the head coach leaves a program, it's kind of natural for the programs to just kind of look into all these programs here, lost their price left, Vermont hired from within. So being already at that institution, not knowing what everything's going to happen. Like a year ago, we thought, yeah, maybe Laura's not there, but not really something it was felt confident and saying, a year later he's gone. And you're just having to be there and you're looking around for coaches. You're like, well, you've been here, Kevin. You get bumped up. So just kind of being at the right spot, the right place at the right spot, right time, really does matter. And you can kind of understand if you're a coach, if it's the 50s, get rich or die trying. It's move up or move out. I think it's not something that only a few people are thinking about now. I think it's kind of what's probably on a lot of coaches' mind. If you're not already at one of those, top 15 jobs as a head coach or assistant, making decent money there. So kind of tough. It's kind of with life. It's things seem to go faster, kind of like a treadmill type of things. But yeah, I think with the coaching circle, especially for the Olympic sports, because I'm always oh, you want to go to these big aircraft carrier type of institutions like Ohio State, but see these coaches stepping off the boat. The grass isn't always greener, but I think the bet, someone like Buddy Mitch. If you're Jim Mitchell, you kind of don't need to move anywhere. You kind of like somebody bought a house in 2021, 2.6% interest. You're I'm not really in a rush to leave. I got a great rate. And if the opportunity comes up, but some other people, bought a house and you got 7% interest. Because you picked the wrong time, to buy a house. Or you didn't pick the wrong time, but things happen economically and change your potential options. So I think if you're a coach at a mid-major, still got a bit of some heat to your name and people are still asking about you. There's an associate level or assistant level at one of these programs. Yeah, I can kind of understand it. Well, what do you want to do type of thing. You're oh, you just want to do this for 5-7 years and then maybe try something different some coaches have, or move to high school for sure. But if you really are trying to be at one of these programs, make it to Memorial Day, make it to a tournament routinely, be in a conference that has multiple chances to make the tournament, either at large, mids, or you have a legitimate shot at the AQ. There's going to be less and less opportunities for those from at the mid-major level, I think, especially as the IVSN's ascension continues.
Last bit of news we just got in here from Ty Zanders. Virginia is hiring Dartmouth offensive coordinator Mikey Herring to be their new offensive coordinator. Mikey Herring, if name sounds familiar, was a player on Virginia's 2019 national championship team. Dartmouth offensive coordinator, of course, means he's been working with Sean Kerwin for the past 3 seasons. Just quick, offense has improved quite a bit. Went from 60th in year 1 to 34th in 2025 and now 27th in 2026. Comes with a style probably familiar to obviously Virginia fans. We'll see how that mix works with Cassis. I mean, we kind of saw the sort of push and pull that Cassis had with the offense there, his offensive style was definitely different than Kerwin's when he kind of came in as OC. So we'll have to see how that kind of works out. Definitely a young coach, though you do balance that out with Fifes. So interesting move.
Taking Kerwin's assistant.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe the Kevin Cassis era, it's going to be great.
It's going to be something, that's for sure.
He's going to go for it. Listen, say what you will. Say what you have to add it to.
You know what? I'll pull one out of your book. Say what you will, but he's very ambitious.
Absolutely.
He's an ambitious gentleman. Kevin Cassis. So there you go. Mikey Herring, Chris Fifes. That's your staff at. We'll see if Schellenberger stays on as the last assistant. All right. This was a fun show. Good stuff. Safe. Clocked in right about 2 hours. Hopefully that's enough for news for a little bit. And we will see if any more comes out, maybe. But hopefully we'll try, and next pod will hopefully be better late than never, the Crossies. We've been busy. Safe, I think you had a trip. I have a trip next week, so there'll be no pod next week. I think Ryan's got something as well. So hopefully around maybe around July 4th, maybe it could be like a
patriotic World Cup Crossies.
World Cup Crossies, just kind of throw it all together. Celebration pod, that could be pretty cool. So that will be what's next on our docket. We hope that this was informative, illuminative pod. Always what we're here to do. Entertaining as well. We covered a lot of ground. Anything else, Dave?
Jake, no, just great start to the May through August era. It's been a great 2 weeks.
All right, friends. Enjoy the World Cup if you have been. It's been good stuff so far. Enjoy this podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't already. We're at youtube.com/thecrosscommission.
YouTube is suppressing us. We need your if you suddenly found no notifications, YouTube's been suppressing us.
Smash the subscribe button, turn on the notifications, hit like. If you're listening to the old-fashioned podcast way, keep doing what you're doing. And we'll be back at you again before you know it. All right, friends. Will Malvis here at the Cross Commission. Stay hydrated. Take care.
See ya.